Yes, hi, you can hear me? Great, you can see the slides, wonderful. I'm completely overwhelmed right now by the situation standing on this stage, because normally I only talk in academic contexts, and I don't think it's going to be too academic, but it's interesting to see the enormous interest in the issue, and of course that is quite obvious too, because online we meet these images all the time, with images like those that we've seen in the last few weeks. And the probably most powerful man in the world excessively uses AI generation to create its imagery and have it created. And he also uses the X account of the White House to spread this into the world. And you call this an AI slop. There's no good German word for it, but I'm waiting for suggestions. But the most evil example that many of you have seen is this AI-generated video that shows the ethnic cleansing of the Gaza Strip as a kind of hip-hop fantasy, also shared by Trump to the masses. And AI slop or flop is a global phenomenon. People showing themselves in these superhero performances, Javier Milei, the Argentine president. And as you see, there is also a gender element to these performances. They are very conventional gender images. That applies to the German right extremist AfD that uses these images for their election campaigns, for their presentations. These are share pics that they use. And this is very typical. There's either a threat, the looming downfall, or a cleanly white idyll with pork that is to be recreated or preserved. And with all these videos, the AfD used this AI-generated video spot to talk about a farmer's market versus a drug market. So we have the light, bright, small-town idyll opposed to the dark drug. And you, as a male subject, were supposed to decide between these. And what is probably behind all these is a Leipzig media agency, which is also responsible for the media, for the Instagram account Wilhelm Kachel, which is openly fascist or national socialist, and uses generators to show these stylized masculine and family imageries that you see here. And the slogans are completely for the patriotic issue. So the love of the global right to generative AI is not a coincidence. It is, which is my thesis, an expression of ideological and aesthetic affinities. And it had also been said, these generators are so natural to use for this, and various factors come together for it, not equal maybe in importance, but I would like to take these apart and illustrate this. On the one hand, AI image generation is structurally nostalgic. It also is based on cliches and amplifies them. And thirdly, it is something like a perceived reality, a felt reality. And this is what I want to talk about. And then in the last item, I would like to pick up on the question whether it's possible to kind of use or approach or appropriate these kind of images from a progressive leftist side. And I will talk about the issues that what I think is the reason that this is very hard to do from that point of view. Now, fundamentally, it can be said that to generate an image of the past or the future, or the present or the future, you need images from the past. There are no other images anyway. These AI generators are fed from existing images, and this archive, as it were, limits the horizon of the supposedly new opportunities that can be generated with these technologies. Now, interestingly, this character of generative AI was quite quickly realized in social media, and there were attempts to illustrate alternative pasts. So this is supposedly a future technology, but it's mostly about creating an alternative past. So film stills from movies that never existed, for example, from Home Alone, as if it took place in the Soviet Union. Catastrophes were imagined, a past that never existed, or the Vienna museums used generators to create images in the style of famous artists. and use them for advertising. And all these alternative pasts are still in the framework of an archive. Generative AI, I would say, and that's why it is nostalgic, produces expectable recombinations of already familiar patterns. And this pattern of recombining old patterns is very much compatible with fascist ideologies because they are about recreating a past too. A past that never existed. Make America or whatever great again is about recreating a past that is mostly existent in images and imaginations. Image of the America of the 1950s, cleanly white and signs you cannot read because this is generative AI at work here. This is perhaps the German version of this imaginary past. AI generated the happy family under the crucifix. So that images can be produced with generative AI, images like this, is not a coincidence, but commercial AI generators, mostly Midjourney, use these nostalgic longings. If you take Midjourney, and this continues into today, if you ask it for an image of a happy German family, you don't get a not even half realistic image of a family these days, but you get images like this or similar ones. Idylls from an undeterminate past, a past that the AfD couldn't imagine any better, style of paintings of the 19th century and home movies, well, not home, but homeland movies. So these amplifiers of cliches are not just a product of the training data that comes from the past, they are also, as shown by commercial AI generators, really intentionally generated. This commercial and reactionary aesthetic is not just a mirror of the average of all the training images, as you might imagine, but it is a product of what I would call a feedback loop of aesthetic optimization. What do I mean by that? There is this fine-tuning of these AI models. First of all, they are fed with billions of images from the internet, and then smaller data sets are used to carry it to the kind of attractive and beautiful pictures that you want to produce. And this is an excerpt of such a training data set for particularly beautiful images. 500 million images in this one, which an AI, let's say, curated images that showed people that were perceived as attractive. And you can see this is a very clear aesthetic, white women, exotic landscapes, intensive color contrasts. But how does the AI notice that this is what humans find attractive? To find out what humans find attractive, reactions of users in a Discord channel were evaluated, and these users saw AI-generated images and then rated them. And this was used to train this other AI that was working on this, curating this larger data set. And these are images that they found particularly attractive. So what happened is that the human taste was aggregated and then algorithmically enhanced, amplified, and then you know what is beautiful. But the people on these Discord channels that rate these images are a fairly small and homogeneous group. These are so-called power users. AI generators are basically optimized towards the aesthetic and I would say ideological expectation of a fairly small and homogeneous group of power users. And these are dominantly white tech-affine users from North America, which you can quite closely see it. And this has been researched. So these are not just aesthetic cliches that are amplified, and I don't have to say this because it's quite obvious and repeated often. Also gender cliches and assignments. And there are many studies every week, new ones are added to it that prove this kind of bias. So there was an AI video model that was analyzed. So this goes all the way through and it's continuing. And there's always a white man in a suit and a nurse. If you prompt that, it is a white or Asian appearing woman, and they're always lean and beautiful. That is the kind of standard that these models have kind of been inscribed with. And the way that this works in this way has many reasons. But the fact that this is hard to get away from is probably the fact that AI generation has to be seen as a kind of reverse pattern recognition. It's not about classifying all images as CEO that show as CEO, or say apple or cat, that would be pattern recognition, but it's the other way around. I have a certain term, a label, and for that label I want to generate an image. And of course, the image that is mostly suited to the label is the most cliched image, the one that is most readable. So through this mechanic, cliche amplification is always triggered. And that's why it's particularly hard to teach the model something else. There have been attempts by the companies, and they have mostly failed. Gemini by Google tried not to change the model, but they changed the user prompts in the background. That is shadow prompt. Shadow prompting is what this is called. So without the users knowing or noticing, certain terms were added, such as black, female, or Asian. The models were still using the same racist, sexist cliches, but internally it was just receiving different prompts. And this worked in a way that right-wing accounts on X, as you can see here, used this to generate absurd examples like female popes and Asian popes. So this was a campaign to kind of expose this bias and make it fail. And that worked because Google then took this image generator out of the market. You might think that this is about a historical truth, but that's not what it was about. It was about the question, who is allowed to stage themselves in which role? If Elon Musk, who orchestrated this excitement about Gemini or this outrage, likes to stage himself in this pseudo-historic, archetypical imageries, mixing all kinds of eras and hyper-masculine fantasies and reproduce those. It's not about who or what is the real historical truth. That is not something that AI will give you anyway, but who is allowed to appropriate these images from history. And that this is people like Elon Musk, but people of color supposedly in this worldview are not allowed to do that. So everyone is kind of put in their place. And these strong reactions to Gemini actually are quite telling about the way that generative AI is understood by the radical right. Because when these images are not adjusted but still produce these images, that from the point of view of the right is not a mistake that should be fixed, but that is part of the promise. So these people do not want to get rid of the cliche, like this is what a Democrat looks like, this is what a Republican looks like, a terrible stereotype. And this account says AI has it all figured out. So they want to have it look this way, and the supposedly statistical logic gives the kind of objectivity to this aura, to this resentment. So generative AI becomes a certain truth machine, in their view. A reverse pattern recognition produces images that is identical with a predefined label that seems to be pre-made, where everyone is assigned their appropriate role. So the young AfD in the southwestern German state of Baden-Württemberg, when they share this clearly AI-generated image of a blonde white woman and puts the slogan, real women are on the right, this is of course a contradiction on the one hand, but in the view of the AfD, real women are exactly those that conform to this cliche, to this. And this is, I think, meant as a threat to all those that do not conform to this cliche and do not want to conform to it. Generative AI, from the point of view of the right, is not just a truth machine, and I want to assert this, is also an image that fulfills wishes. And this is quite clear to see in an image like this, where the AfD in Baden-Württemberg again illustrated this fear-filled atmosphere in German Christmas markets. And they are commenting this like this. Most people like to post positive, beautiful images for Christmas, and that is good, but it doesn't really reflect the reality. And for that, we have now used Midjourney. And this kind of statement, I think, is so crazy, but also so telling. Because what is being formulated here is that AI images serve to create the images that are already in the minds of the audience, but only in that audience's minds and not in the external reality. And this reminded me of a quote by a strategy paper of the identitary movement, quoted by Enis Mazzi in their wonderful book, Ice Cream Cafe Europe. The images and words that we choose must be present in the people's minds already. They have to express what everyone thinks and bring the unspoken opinion of the majority into the light, into the forefront. And I think AI is the instrument that completely fulfills this ambition. AI creates just this, alternative reality constructions based on very simple slogans and ubiquitous images and unspoken patterns and expectations. And I think I would say this is a controversial thesis. It's not just about disinformation. I think this is just one part, but not the most important. And a post like this by Elon Musk shows this quite clearly. It plays quite offensively with the idea that you don't have to believe an image like this to be effective. Can you believe she wears that outfit, he writes. So, can you really believe that she wore the Soviet uniform? No one believes that, and that's not the point. Everyone that says, well, this is a fake and this is disinformation, they've actually fallen into the trap already, because this is one level further in terms of irony. It takes all the people that have this observed or perceived reality that she is a communist, and the images just show this. It doesn't have to be believed, it just illustrates this. And AI-generated imageries of digital fascism, I would say, is not just primarily about disinformation. It's about serving affectations and producing right feeling communities, as Simon Strick called it. It's about visualizing perceived realities, like the one that Kamala Harris is a communist and that Christmas markets are these highly weaponized environments of fear. And now the question, of course, is, could we do the same thing from the left side as well? Shall we leave these tools to the right-wing people? Can it be used for emancipatory purposes? And in my last part, I would like to say why I'm quite skeptical about this.
So the question is asked often, and the main argument is that generative AI is not just a tool that you can use in this way or that way, but it's also a political project, and therefore it's very manifest and visible. And this political project is driven by these people. Some people know these people and know how these people should show. This depict. It's Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, and Altman uses this picture since the beginning of March for his X account. And this is an answer and engaging in a global trend that many people have noticed, and that is ChatGPT included in its new version, the image generator that where many people found out that you can make a lot of pictures in the style of Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, and lots of pictures just started, including these pictures from memes and classical film scenes or selfies, and the cynical top peak of this was by the official X account by the White House, this Ghiblified picture of a woman who started crying when she was arrested by an ICE agent, and this deportation regime is using these images because they like it, and they're also making fun of it, and it's easy for them. This is a demonstration of power, and with the use of AI-generated images. But even some Altman's self-generated, possibly harmless images is still a demonstration of power, because he wants to get through his own interests and without asking, and he's exploiting trainings with his training model, using the art of others, and
in an interview with the tech CEO Anderson, this was shown. Anderson, as we can see here, showed Altman an AI-generated cartoon in a Peanut style by Charles M. Schulz and asked, isn't this actually theft of intellectual property, and there was spontaneous applause. And Altman reacts quite unimpressed. You can clap about that all you want, enjoy. And this kind of this attitude has reasons. And this is that Altman and other tech oligarchs can be quite secure in their position now with the Trump administration in place. They forwarded a meme to the government, which is about the massive appropriation of copyrighted data. They actually called on the Trump administration to establish a right to learn. So the mass use of copyrighted works is learning, they say. And for many creatives, this is simply theft or plagiary. And I think these are well-founded terms for this, and they express well-founded concerns. I think this is almost belittling, because theft and plagiary is perhaps a step too little. If you use billions of images, it's not just theft and plagiary, it's also mass appropriation and exploitation and devaluation of human work. Because you have to realize, if you steal something or plagiarize someone, you appropriate it and present it as your own work, but you're still producing the value of it, and this is being devalued. And this is what these companies clearly say. In a current dispute, Meta has to defend itself against an IP lawsuit, and they say to defend themselves, their work as training data has no economic value. For there to be a market, there must be something of value to exchange. But none of the plaintiffs' works has economic value individually as training data. It's only the mass that has value. The individual work, in the view of these platform companies, the AI corporations, has no value. And this mass devaluation of creative work seems to be possible only with political support. And how serious the Trump administration is to support the industry in its fight and its devaluation, this was made clear a few days ago, because the U.S. Copyright Office published a report where they said that the reference to fair use is questionable, and said maybe machine learning at large scale is not covered by fair use. And what happened then? Trump simply fired the head of the Copyright Office. So this is the kind of authoritarian state power that kind of gets AI and supports AI. And this is happening around the world. Interests of the AI companies are being enforced. And this was quite clearly said by J.D. Vance at the recent AI summit in Europe. Any regulation efforts by European governments should not be threatening the supremacy. We need our European friends in particular to look to this new frontier with optimism. So he clearly said that AI is a new colonialist project, a product of unbounded expansion across all borders, and that is supposed to be enforced with all political power available. And this is not just about property rights, intellectual property, copyright. As we know, the training of these models, the operation of it requires huge data centers. So this is the unbounded exploitation of natural resources too. And the most impressive picture I think for this, and the one that you should talk about when you talk about generative AI, is this one that was produced a few weeks ago. This is an aerial image of one of Musk's data center for xAI, the company that he built, and this is in Memphis, Tennessee, which is almost exclusively staffed by black people in an area that's almost completely. And this is actually powered by illegal gas turbines, which produced an incredible amount of environmental pollution and literally take away the people's right to breathe, the people living in the area, which are disadvantaged black people that pay with their health. So this disrespect against people and their environment, which is shown here, is what many left-wing progressive powers causes them to look at this very skeptically. And I think because this is this way, and because we get outraged about this, this is why the digital fascism loves these images all the more, be part of that political project. So as a response to the outrage, to this image, the communication officer of the White House posted this image again. The arrests will continue, the memes will continue. So this disrespect, this inhumanity is what the images of generated AI and aesthetic imagery is showing as well.
So back to the question, and to the end, to the question, can we, these picture images used for emancipatory goals? And I'm increasingly becoming skeptical about this. Generative AI is not a politic neutral tool, but embedded in a political project of the respectless extractivism and the boundless expansion. And whoever uses it an uncritical way, you will also work in the last consequences for this fascist project and for the expansion of this project. And that's why I got to the end, and therefore thanks for the attention.